I'm Catherine, and I was born into what you'd call a typical American family. My dad, Jack, was this ambitious guy who'd started his own paint and varnish company from scratch. Mom, Sarah, was your classic housewife, always busy with chores and gossip. And then there was my older brother, Tom, 5 years my senior and the apple of my mother's eye. Dad was hardly ever around, buried in work and drowning in loans he'd taken out to get his business off the ground. When he did show up, he'd lock himself in his office, muttering about invoices and profit margins. Mom, well, she made it clear from day one that Tom was her favorite. "Oh, Tommy, you're my joy, my everything," she'd coop, even when he came home reeking of cheap beer or with a black guy from another fight. Me, I was just there, an afterthought, really. Don't get me wrong, Dad loved me in his own way. He'd try to make up for his absence with gifts. For my 9th birthday, he gave me this clunky video camera. "Capture our family moments, sweetheart," he said with a tired smile. Little did he know how that camera would change everything. I remember this one Sunday when I was about 10. Dad had promised to take us to the park, but, surprise, surprise, he got called into work. Mom lost it. "Jack, for Christ's sake, it's Sunday!" she screamed, her face red with anger. "Your kids need you. I need you." I stood in the hallway, that damn camera in my hand, recording it all. They didn't even notice me. Dad's voice dropped to a whisper. "If you just help out with the business." Mom laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Help out with your pipe dream? Wake up, Jack. You're drowning us in debt for a business that's going nowhere." I lowered the camera, my heart pounding. This wasn't the first fight I'd witnessed, but it was the worst. I didn't fully understand what was happening, but I knew our family was falling apart. As the days went by, the tension in our house grew thicker. Dad spent more time at work, and when he was home, the silence between him and Mom was deafening. Tom started acting out more, coming home late, reeking of cigarettes and God knows what else. One night I woke up to the sound of breaking glass. I crept downstairs, camera in hand. It had become a sort of security blanket for me. Mom was standing in the kitchen, surrounded by shattered pieces of what used to be her favorite vase. "Mom," I whispered. She turned to me, her eyes glazed over. "Go back to bed, Kath," she slurred. That's when I noticed the half-empty wine bottle on the counter. The next day, everything seemed normal again. Mom made pancakes, Dad read the newspaper, and Tom slouched over his cereal. But I knew better now. I knew that beneath the surface our family was cracking like that vase. It was just another Tuesday when my world exploded. I was 10, Tom was 15, and neither of us had any clue what was about to hit us. I was in my room, fiddling with my camera, when I heard the front door slam. Dad's voice boomed through the house, angrier than I'd ever heard it. "Sarah, get down here now!" Curious and scared, I crept to the top of the stairs, camera in hand. Force of habit, I guess. Mom sauntered into the living room, looking annoyed. "What's got your panties in a twist, Jack?" Dad's face was red, his hands shaking as he thrust a manila envelope at her. "Care to explain this?" I zoomed in on Mom's face. She looked different. Not scared, sorry, but almost relieved. "Well," Dad demanded, "what do you have to say for yourself?" Mom tossed the papers aside and laughed. It was a cold, harsh sound that made me shiver. "What do you want me to say, Jack? That I'm sorry? You want the truth? I've been cheating on you for years, and you know what? I enjoyed every minute of it." I gasped, almost dropping my camera. Dad looked like he'd been punched in the gut. "Why, Sarah? Why would you do this?" "Because you were never here, Jack," Mom exploded. "You and your damn business. Did you really think I'd sit around waiting for you forever?" "I did it for us," Dad said weakly. "For our family." Mom scoffed. "Family? What family? We've been broken for years, Jack. I was just the first one to admit it." The argument went on for hours. I recorded every painful minute of it, even though my arms ached and my eyes burned with unshed tears. They never noticed me standing there, too caught up in their own drama. The next few weeks were a blur. There were hushed phone calls, slammed doors, and more shouting matches than I could count. Tom retreated further into his own world, spending most of his time locked in his room. Finally, one night, Mom and Dad sat us down. "Kids," Mom began, "your dad and I, we getting a divorce, scene, sweetie. You'll be staying with your father, and Tom, you'll be coming with me." Tom shrugged like he couldn't care less, but I saw the relief in his eyes. Dad was generous. He left the house to Mom and also started paying child support for Tom. The move was quick and painless, at least physically. Our new apartment was small, nothing like the house we'd left behind, But it was ours, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. It wasn't easy, though. Dad worked longer hours than ever, trying to keep the business afloat and pay for everything. Some nights I'd find him at the kitchen table, head in his hands, surrounded by bills. 5 years flew by in a blur of homework, part-time jobs, and watching Dad struggle to keep his business afloat. I was 15 when everything changed again, but this time it was for the better. Her name was Rachel, and she walls into our lives like a whirlwind. I remember the day Dad introduced us. He had this goofy grin on his face, one I hadn't seen in years. "Catherine, this is Rachel. She used to intern at the company, and now, well, we're seeing each other." Rachel smiled warmly. "It's great to finally meet you, Catherine. Your dad talks about you all the time." I sized her up, ready to hate her on principle, but there was something about Rachel that made it impossible. She was genuine, kind, and she looked at Dad like he hung the moon. It didn't take long for Rachel to become a permanent fixture in our lives. She moved in a few months later, and suddenly our tiny apartment felt like a home again. One night I overheard them talking in the kitchen. "Jack, my dad's, willing to finance that new production line you've been dreaming about," Rachel said. "He believes in you, Jack. We both do." I peeked around the corner to see Dad pull Rachel into a tight hug. "What did I do to deserve you?" he whispered. It hit me then. This was what love should look like. Not the bitter, resentful mess I'd grown up with, but this: support, trust, and genuine happiness. The next few years were like watching a rocket take off. With Rachel's connections and Dad's expertise, the business skyrocketed. The new paint line was a hit in Rachel's dad's hardware stores, and soon orders were pouring in from all over the country. I'd catch Dad and Rachel working late into the night, heads bent over spreadsheets, arguing good-naturedly about expansion plans. But unlike the arguments I remembered from my childhood, these always ended with laughter and a kiss. "Why don't you two just get married already?" I asked one day over dinner. They shared a look and burst out laughing. "Oh, sweetie," Rachel said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Our love doesn't need a government stamp of approval." I rolled my eyes, but I got it. They were happy, and that's all that mattered. As for me, well, I was doing pretty well too. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make Dad proud. When I graduated college, there was no question about what I wanted to do next. And just like that, we became an unstoppable trio. Dad with his industry knowledge, Rachel with her business savvy, and me with fresh ideas from college. We were unstoppable. 10 years after Rachel came into our lives, Dad was rich, like private jet and vacation homes rich. It was surreal. Mom and Tom, well, that's a whole other can of worms. I hadn't spoken to either of them in years, not since that disastrous Thanksgiving when Mom got drunk and called Rachel a home-wrecking fion. Tom supported her and called me a traitor. I'd left in tears that night, vowing never to subject myself to that again. Sometimes I'd see Mom's name pop up on my phone or get a random text from Tom asking for money. I always ignored them. It hurt, but I'd made my choice. I chose happiness, success, and love. Life has a cruel way of pulling the rug out from under you just when everything seems perfect. For us, that moment came on a sunny Saturday in June. Dad had been talking about bungee jumping for weeks. "Life's too short to play it safe," he'd say, eyes twinkling with excitement. Rachel and I tried to talk him out of it, but you know how Dad was when he set his mind to something. The call came just after noon. I remember every excruciating detail. The trembling voice of the bungee instructor, the words "heart attack," and didn't make it echoing in my ears. The sound of Rachel's coffee mug shattering on the kitchen floor. It didn't feel real. Dad, gone. The man who'd built an empire from nothing, who'd weathered every storm life threw at him, taken down by a stupid bungee jump. The funeral was, well, it was a show, to put it bluntly. It seemed like half the city had turned up to pay their respects. Business partners in somber suits, employees with red-rimmed eyes, friends and relatives we hadn't seen in years. Dad would have hated all the fuss, but it warmed my heart to see how many lives he'd touched. And then Mom and Tom showed up. I almost didn't recognize them at first. Mom looked old, her face puffy and lined, eyes bloodshot. Tom slouched beside her, all muscle and attitude, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. They sat a few rows behind us, but their voices carried. Well, Jack finally got what was coming to him. Mom's voice slurred. I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. How dare they? How heck dare they come here and disrespect Dad like this? But it got worse. You know, Mom's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper that somehow seemed louder than before. I heard his little girlfriend arrange the whole thing. Paid for the bungee jump herself. Probably knew his heart couldn't take it. Wanted to get her hands on his money, I bet. I couldn't take it anymore. I whirled around, my vision blurred with tears and rage. Shut up, I hissed. Just shut the hell up. How dare you come here and spread your poisonous lies? Dad loved Rachel, and she loved him. This was a terrible accident, nothing more. So if you can't show some basic human decency and respect, then just leave. Nobody wants you here anyway. The church fell silent. All eyes were on us. Mom stood up, swaying slightly. Come on, Tom, we're leaving. Let them have their little pity party. We'll see them at the will reading. The rest of the funeral passed in a haze of grief and anger, but as we stood by Dad's grave, watching the casket being lowered, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of our troubles. 2 weeks after we laid Dad to rest, we all gathered in Mr. Goldstein's office for the reading of the will. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Rachel sat beside me, her face a mask of calm. Mom slouched in her chair, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Tom stood by the window, arms crossed, scowling at nothing in particular. Mr. Goldstein cleared his throat and began reading. I, Jack Thompson, being of sound mind and body, do hereby... I tuned out the legal jargon, my heart pounding. And then, to my daughter, Catherine, I leave all my worldly possessions, including all properties, bank accounts, and full ownership of Thompson Paint and Varnish Company. The room went deadly silent. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Mr. Goldstein continued, to my ex-wife, Sarah, and my son, Thomas, I leave the sum of $20,000 each. Mom's shriek made us all jump. This is hog. That business was my idea. I sacrificed everything for Jack and that goddamn company. I raised his children while he was off playing businessman. That company is rightfully mine. I glanced at Rachel. She sat there calm as ever, but I could see the slight tremor in her hands. Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Dad built that company from nothing. You didn't even believe in him when he started. She rounded on me, eyes blazing. You ungrateful little brat. I should have known you'd side with him. You always were Daddy's little girl, weren't you? I took a deep breath. Look, I don't want to fight. If it'll make you feel better, I'll give you $100 grand. Just please, let's end this here. Mom laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. $100 grand? You think you can buy me off that easily? No, sweetheart, I'm going to sue. I'm going to take every last penny that son of a cab owed me. Enough, Mr. Goldstein's voice cut through the argument. The will is clear and legally binding. If you wish to contest it, Mrs. Thompson, you're welcome to do so through the proper legal channels. Now, if there's nothing else, I think we're done here. Mom stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Tom followed, but not before shooting me a look that could curdle milk. As Rachel and I left the office, I felt a weight settle on my shoulders. Dad's company, his legacy, it was all mine now, and apparently so were his problems. After the disaster at Mr. Goldstein's office, Rachel and I retreated to my penthouse. The silence was deafening as we both tried to process what had just happened. Rachel, I said, breaking the quiet, we need to talk about the business. I want you to have a part of it. 20%. Rachel's eyes widened in shock. Catherine, no. Your father left it to you. It's yours. I shook my head. It's ours. You've invested so much in it, not just money, but time and energy. You helped build it into what it is today. It's only fair. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Before I knew it, she had engulfed me in a tight hug. Thank you, she whispered. Jack would be so proud of you. We signed the papers that afternoon. It felt right, like I was honoring Dad's memory and securing our future all at once. But of course, Mom couldn't let us have even this small victory. The lawsuit came 2 weeks later. Mom was demanding the entire business and most of Dad's property. Her lawyer threw around phrases like marital assets and unjust enrichment, but it all boiled down to one thing. She wanted what she thought Dad owed her. The next few months were a blur of court appearances, depositions, and sleepless nights. Rachel and I threw ourselves into running the company, determined not to let Mom's vendetta derail everything Dad had worked for. In the end, the judge rejected Mom's claim. The will stood. I thought that would be the end of it, but I should have known better. It was during the final hearing that Mom's lawyer dropped the bomb. Your Honor, we've just learned that Miss Thompson has transferred a significant portion of the business to Rachel Carson, the deceased's girlfriend. In light of this new information, we'd like to file a separate suit against Miss Carson. My heart sank. I glanced at Rachel, who had gone pale. On what grounds? The judge asked, sounding as tired as I felt. Alienation of affection, Your Honor. We have reason to believe Miss Carson engaged in an affair with the deceased years ago, leading to the breakdown of my client's marriage. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was a lie, all of it. But as I looked at Mom's triumphant face, I realized she didn't care about the truth. She just wanted to hurt us, to take what she thought was hers. As we left the courthouse that day, reporters swarmed us, shoving microphones in our faces and shouting questions. Miss Thompson, did you know about your father's affair? Miss Carson, how long were you involved with Jack Thompson? Is it true you're giving away your inheritance to your father's mistress? Rachel grabbed my hand and pulled me through the crowd. No comment, she repeated, her voice steady even as I could feel her hand shaking in mine. Once we were safely in the car, I broke down. I'm so sorry, Rachel. This is all my fault. If I hadn't given you part of the company... Stop, Rachel said firmly. You did nothing wrong. Your mother, she's hurt and angry, and she's lashing out. But we're going to get through this together. I nodded, wiping my eyes. Together, I echoed. As our driver navigated through the city traffic, I couldn't help but wonder, how much more would we have to endure before this was over, and at what cost? The day of the trial arrived, and I felt like I was going to be sick. The idea of testifying against my own mother made my stomach churn, but I knew it was necessary. Rachel deserved justice, and Mom needed to face the consequences of her actions. As I sat in the witness stand, I could feel Mom's glare burning into me, but I focused on Rachel's encouraging smile and found the strength to speak. Your Honor, I began, my voice surprisingly steady, I have evidence that directly contradicts my mother's claims. The courtroom fell silent as I explained about the old videos I'd found. With shaking hands, I presented the tapes to the court. The first video played, showing a much younger version of my parents in our old living room. Mom's voice, slurred but clear, filled the courtroom. You want the truth, Jack? Fine. I've been cheating on you for years. And you know what? I don't regret it one bit. I couldn't look at Mom, but I heard her sharp intake of breath. The video continued, laying bare all of her infidelities and lies. Next, I presented the detective's report Dad had kept, detailed records of Mom's affairs, with dates, times, and photographic evidence. As you can see, Your Honor, I concluded, my mother's claims of my father having an affair with Rachel are completely false. In fact, it was my mother who was unfaithful throughout their marriage. The judge's face was grim as he reviewed the evidence. Mom's lawyer looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. When the verdict came, it was decisive. The judge not only dismissed Mom's case against Rachel, but also ordered her to pay all legal fees. Mom didn't take it well. She insulted Rachel and me, saying things you wouldn't expect to hear from your own mother. She continued her tirade, spewing profanities, until the judge had no choice but to find her in contempt of court. As the bailiffs escorted her out, she turned to me, her eyes blazing with hatred. This isn't over, Catherine. You'll regret this, I swear to God. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. A few days later, Rachel burst into my office, her face pale. She handed me her phone. On the screen was Mom's Facebook page, filled with posts about our company. Thompson Paint is drowning in debt, one post screamed. Catherine Thompson is running it into the ground, said another. Inside source reveals Catherine Thompson planning to flee to Mexico with company funds. We spent the next 48 hours in crisis mode. We issued statements to our employees and customers, assuring them of the company's financial stability. Our legal team drafted a cease and desist letter to Mom, threatening a libel lawsuit if she didn't retract her statements. To my surprise, it worked. Maybe Mom finally realized she'd gone too far, or maybe she just ran out of fight. Whatever the reason, she posted a retraction the next day. I, Sarah Thompson, hereby retract my previous statements regarding Thompson Paint and Varnish Company and its CEO, Catherine Thompson. My claims were unfounded and made in anger. I sincerely apologize for any confusion or distress my words may have caused. As I read her words, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. This woman who had once been my mother was now nothing more than a bitter stranger intent on destroying everything Dad had built. 2 months passed in relative peace. The company was thriving, and Rachel and I had settled into a comfortable routine. The wounds from the legal battles were slowly healing, and I dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, we could move on. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. It was a crisp autumn evening, and I was heading to my car after a long day at the office. The parking lot was nearly empty, the setting sun casting long shadows across the asphalt. As I fumbled for my keys, a familiar voice made me freeze. Catherine. I turned slowly, hardly believing my eyes. There, looking small and worn, stood my mother. Mom, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, what are you doing here? She shuffled her feet, not quite meeting my eyes. I've been thinking about your offer. The $100,000. Is that offer still on the table? I take it and leave you alone. For a moment I was speechless. Then, to my own surprise, I started laughing. It wasn't a happy laugh, but a tired, incredulous one. Are you serious? I finally managed to say. After everything you put us through, the lawsuits, the slander, the lies? Mom's face hardened. Now listen here, young lady. No, you listen, I cut her off, feeling years of pent-up frustration pouring out. That offer expired the moment you decided to drag us through court. It's gone, Mom, just like any respect or affection I had left for you. She paled, then flushed with anger. You ungrateful little... I'm not finished, I said, my voice cold. If you ever try to threaten me or slander our company again, I will sue you for every penny you have left. And trust me, I'll win. Without waiting for a response, I got into my car and drove away, watching her shrinking figure in my rearview mirror. It felt like the end of a chapter, but also the beginning of something new. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Rachel and I threw ourselves into work, expanding the company in ways Dad had only dreamed of. We launched a new eco-friendly paint line, opened 3 new factories, and even started a scholarship program for aspiring young entrepreneurs. Through it all, Dad's memory was our guiding light. We kept his photo on the wall of our main conference room, a constant reminder of where we came from and what we were working toward. Dad was gone, but his legacy lived on. Through us, through the company he'd built from nothing, through the love he'd shared with Rachel, and through the strength he'd instilled in me. And as for me and Rachel, we were more than just business partners. We were family, bound not by blood, but by love, respect, and a shared dream.